The debt is yours from now on, so out of nowhere they digitally created money. That's how they create all the money in the world, based on debt. That is only one part. This is an economy based on debt. But there's also a component that you could call usage costs, interest rates. Then in school with economics they teach you that there are savings on the opposite because someone worked really hard for it. So, it makes sense that he receives something for the money he lends to someone else. Well, all of that isn't true. But what it is about is that this interest rate of 5% a year on average was not created in the contract of debt. This means they have to take the interest out of some other contract, which causes the start of the global shortage, leading to competition all over the world and virtually creates all misery we experience amongst the people in society. There is a continuous stream of this 5% interest rate that is taken from the bottom of the pyramid and whisked away to the top capital. When we do the math, 5 times 10 years. After 10 years it is 50%, after 20 years 100%. The shortages just keep increasing. To solve this they keep creating debt contract based on debt contract worldwide in all the layers, people, government, companies, etc. Debt on debt, to cover the holes they whisked away 5% leaves. They are sucking the real value, resources, out of the world, like a bunch of vampires. That is what it is. In 20 years, they already stole 100% of the real value. This is what causes the national debts to increase. You will see everywhere, with individuals, that those debts keep growing. Then reports start showing up, like Oxfam Novib, after a global research did show that 8 people own as much as half the people in this world. How is that possible? It's not just speculation, it's the interest rate that takes the real actual value and adds it to the capital at the top. Last thing about this pyramid, you have rules, laws, armies, police services, fiscal services, name them. You have all these rules and laws and organizations on the other side that ensure the bottom layer, real life, stays where it is, to make sure they don't end up with 7 million in the top. They don't want that, so it's tightly closed. As long as people don't realize how this works, how they're deceived, how they're being robbed, how the real value, their value, is taken away from them to enrich the rich even further, as long as people don't see this, as long as they are not aware, nothing will change. Then I am talking about the old world, because all misery on earth is a business model. Syria is a business model. It is about resources and some other interests. All of that is being orchestrated by one organization, the top of the pyramid, and delegated through them.
As you said earlier, follow the money, because eventually that is what it's all about.
Yes, very much so. So when you see how this value extraction, I've brought an article from NOS, Dutch news channel, which anyone can Google. If you Google this, gas prices increase inflation. Apart from the fact that the title is already incorrect, it is very interesting to read. The article is from February 9, 2017. Most of the things they are describing is a distortion of the truth. Because if the prices of gas increase, it does not mean that it actually is more cost. No, it means our salary is worth less. Our currency is being depreciated, purchasing power decreases. That is what inflation is. So, what is found to be very remarkable is the nuggets of truth we do get from them, even though it is from NOS. Because it states, with the adjusted inflation rate of 1.6%, the Netherlands are up to speed again with the European inflation, which averages 1.8% a year. On average, your salary is worth 1.8% a year less, which decreases our purchasing power yearly. This is exactly why in the past one single person with a good job could sustain the entire family and two full-timers can hardly make ends meet and are being trapped in a crisis. Because 1.2 million people in the Netherlands are in debt and won't get out of it anymore. It's not some wild tale. And then the important part, the European Central Bank, you know, the one on the top of the pyramid, has tried for the last 2 years, by use of policies for low interest rate and continuous money printing, they create 80 billion of new money every month, using contracts based on debt contracts to increase the inflation within the Eurozone to the desired level of almost 2% per year. Hence, they are stealing 2% a year of our labor and time of production which we are receiving a salary for. They are consciously stealing 2% a year and then they say the prices are increasing. That is a blatant lie. Our money is depreciated. That is what they are doing. So next to the interest rate, we find to be normal, is inflation another way, and inflation is theft. So they extract value in multiple ways. Now we are talking about the financial mechanism the elite uses to extort value, through a financial monetary system, an economic system. They do so through the banks. The banks being the key to this process. We are talking about BSN, Citizen Service Number. I sometimes say, service. I think, is it a citizen service number or a citizen slavery number? If people realize where we find ourselves and see we are in a rat race of competition and scarcity, they should research the financial system that only services to better the rich and keep the poor miserable. Interest, a take-home message, interest. According to statistics calculated by economists, is paid by 80% of the people during their entire lifetime. 10% receives some interest and pays some, and the other 10% only receives interest. So this already illustrates the problem at hand. The main portion of humans pays the system their entire lives, and a small portion takes from the system. National debt, over the last 30 years we pay 13 billion in interest per year, for national debt. From the taxes paid by citizens, 13 billion of this created money goes to privately owned banks. This again based on money, created out of nothing, with a contract of debt in which our state happily engages. The government happily plays along and pays the privately owned banks the usage fees. If we would keep this 13 billion a year, average over 30 years, we would not need to economize anymore. So when people realize this seemingly innocent interest rate is actually the big corrupter causing all the trouble. Moreover, when the Catholics were still ruling Europe, interest rates were illegal and punishable by death. The death penalty for charging interest. It is a biggie in holy books as it is described.
It is actually still illegal.
Yes, Islamic banking. Unfortunately, nowadays several new calculation models are established which is also a form of interest charging. But the pure Islamic banking was the last to stay away from charging interest. The funny thing about Islamic banking is that 50% of the people are Islamic at all. It is a purely ethical, morally, based on principle decisions to bank without interest rates. These people are aware of the damage it causes.
Meanwhile politicians look away. I understood the Court of Audit does not even have access to what ECB does.
No. They are privately owned organizations and have so much authority and protection that they don't require anything at all.
Then what is the Court of Auditors and the government doing in our names?
These kinds of institutions serve the political system. For example, the elections, they calculated budgets of parties and their plans. You could use it for good, but you can also use it to serve certain agendas. During the election period, they calculated things in such a way to show how extremely well we were all doing. Things are going better, new jobs, all things to show how amazing things are now. As soon as the elections are done and over with, we will start hearing about economizing once again.
However, the Court of Audit doesn't even have access to data of banks. They have no right to it.
Well, officially, companies do have yearly reports, but you are talking about a level in which decisions are made that are not made public.
Exactly.
Yes, you are right. But that is true for BIS. There is another mechanism, well, many others. You've got ESM, European Stability Mechanism. The House of Representatives, I think in 2012, gave 100 votes to create this. ESM is an institute that is again fully protected. Employees are indemnified. They are immune. The organization is allowed to do what they want, nothing is publicly available, as an entity is sort of a free state. This organization, empowered by the representatives, ministers, the government, was initially made to save countries which soon became banks instead. And this mechanism, the ESM mechanism, ensures that within 7 days, any required amount of money, be it 10 billion or 100 billion, has to be delivered by the Netherlands within 7 days. So if ESM decides it wants to save, for example, Greece, and they need money, they can assign Germany, the government in the Netherlands gives us 10 billion. Then that has to be sent within 7 days to ESM so they can execute their program to save, in this case, banks. So if we take Greece as an example, a lot of money has been sent through ESM, not even 5% has actually arrived in Greece. Most of it has directly gone through Greece to German, French and Dutch banks. They were all betting on Greece and made sure they could buy themselves out of stocks on Greece. So they have freed themselves through these mechanisms. And all that money is coming from us, from our tax money and national debt and so on. All these mechanisms, what we are talking about now, ensure we remain where we are and impoverish more.